Hello, I'm Dr Jodi Richardson, and you're listening to Well, Hello Anxiety, a podcast where we end the struggle with anxiety and build our toolkit of practical skills to thrive. Hello, lovely listeners. It is you and me again, and I'm recording this episode today for all of us because when I was doing my strength training this morning, I had a moment where I realised something. I looked at something, I guess, from a different perspective. And what I wanted to talk to you about today is that really when it comes to managing anxiety, look, those of you who followed the podcast for years recently just celebrated 150 episodes. So if you are new, there is a beautiful back catalogue that will keep you engaged. But if you're new, welcome. And you may not know my story, but I can look back and see that my anxiety symptoms began when I was a 4-year-old at school. I have talked about this on and off over the years during the podcast, and I've dived a little bit deeper on some occasions, but I still find anxiety is very much a part of my day, but I've learned skills and strategies, thinking skills and practical strategies to really help control the symptoms of my anxiety. I understand what's happening in my brain and I know how my body responds. I know what makes a difference for me to be able to dial my anxiety down. And I'm also really willing to move forward and do the things that make me anxious, even taking my anxiety along for the ride. And that's really why I called this podcast, Well, Hello Anxiety, because if we can turn towards our anxiety and see it for what it is, a part of us that is very protective, but for those of us with an anxiety disorder, it is overprotective. When we can see it for what it is and understand what's happening, understand why we feel the way we do in our body, the symptoms and signs for us that can show us, hey, this is anxiety showing up. We know what to do to settle those down, to manage our symptoms and get them to a point where we can think more clearly, be really aligned with our values and move forward to do the things that felt hard, that felt anxiety provoking, that felt overwhelming. Then we can teach our brain that what it once thought was dangerous isn't. And ultimately, we can train ourselves to be able to eventually do those things without the anxiety showing up. And I'll take you back to my very first podcast episode where, oh goodness, I can't bear to go back and listen because I feel as though the anxiety that I was feeling will be just, audible with every word. But you know what? That was such an example of me being motivated by what was important, what really mattered. And that was feeling really stuck in COVID, where I had so much knowledge and expertise and experience and a way of sharing it when I was speaking in front of audiences that really connected with people and really engaged people and really motivated people to do something different and to really look at managing their anxiety so they could thrive. Yet I found myself in COVID with opportunities to still speak to groups online, as we know well and good, but also feeling really stuck that there were so many people struggling and anxiety was such a huge challenge because uncertainty is a really strong driver of anxiety. And I started the podcast because I felt really strongly that I might be able to help a handful of people. And, you know, I remember listening to Alexandra Franzen a long time ago, and if you're not familiar with her work, she'll show up on Google. But she said, even if you've got 4 or 5 people that might be listening to a message that you feel really strongly about sharing, that's like having the attention of an elevator full of people all listening to what you've got to say. And so I knew I would start small, and it was the willingness to take the anxiety with me that kept me moving. It wasn't that I didn't have it. It wasn't that my mind was not saying to me, don't do it. I wish I hadn't told Craig Harper. on his podcast that I was planning on doing a podcast because he became an immediate champion and cheerleader for me. And, I had these stories in my mind about the fact that even though I'd said that I would do it, I didn't have to, and that would be okay as well. And that's because our mind can really sabotage us because it's trying to protect us. It's vulnerable recording your voice and putting it out into the world. It's vulnerable walking into a group of people when you feel socially anxious. It's a vulnerable thing to do, to put your hand up and say, I've got a different opinion to perhaps the consensus in a group of people at work. And it's really tough to move forward when anxiety in your body and in your mind is saying, don't do it. It's too risky. I recognised that was a story my mind was telling, and that is a diffusion technique. That is one of the techniques that I have found to be incredibly powerful for me to manage the overthinking and the intrusive thinking that can come with anxiety. I am medicated for my anxiety, and that has helped a lot with the intrusive thoughts and the avalanche of ideas and thoughts and stories and the challenges in my mind that would really stand in the way for a long time before I found the medication that worked for me, which has really enabled me to use the skills that I teach, that I share on the podcast, that I share when I'm speaking to groups, that are in my books. And that's given me that little bit of space. And I talk really openly, obviously, about my mental health, and a lot of my guests do as well. Medication isn't for everyone. Not all anxiety is a disorder. And I tried for a very long time with therapy and with exercise and with mindfulness and meditation, and all of that helped a lot. But I wasn't a parent at that stage, and the moment I became a parent, it just became evident to me after a couple of years of trying to parent with anxiety that I wasn't able to really manage it the way I wanted to. And so I remember Peter said to me, would you try medication for us? Because it wasn't something that I really wanted to turn to for myself. And I thought, goodness, I really hadn't stopped to think about how my mental health was affecting my family. And so I said, yes, I will. I absolutely will. That was a real turning point. And so I still get anxious every day. And in fact, last week I was at a conference. Last week, whilst I'm recording this, it won't be last week when you hear the episode, but I was feeling a little anxious about being at a conference as a delegate. I wasn't speaking, and connecting with people I hadn't seen since the last time I was at this conference. And I just was feeling anxious, which is not something I normally experience when it comes to socializing. Social anxiety isn't something that has really been a challenge for me. But I also knew that the conference was really important, and that connecting with people, the people that were there and learning and hanging out with my awesome friends at the conference was important. So my anxiety went with me. And sometimes I voice it. Sometimes I'll say to someone close, hey, I'm feeling really anxious. And sometimes I won't. Sometimes I'll just have that idea in my mind that I'm feeling anxious, and I'll take extra care of myself, a little bit of time away, maybe lunch on my own on occasion, maybe skipping out in the afternoon to spend a little bit of time in my room, which was what I did. And huge thanks to my Airbnb buddy, Fee Mims, because we shared and we, really were able to have time together, which was absolutely amazing. And on a couple of occasions, we each took a bit of time alone as well, just to kind of recalibrate and reset. The thing about anxiety is it can be an absolute stop sign. It can make our world very small. And I know, I talk to so many people about this, each and every one of us harbours a dream, whether that's a little dream or a big dream, and anxiety is often what stands in the way, or we might say it's fear. Let me explain the difference. If I was walking down my driveway, which we have a long driveway where we live, and in the past we've had golden orb spiders spin beautiful webs across the driveway, which is about a car and a half width apart. So it's a pretty fair effort. If I was outside doing a little bit of pruning or just watering the plants and I walked into a web and felt a spider on me, I would experience fear, a clear and present threat to my safety in that moment. Spider, oh gosh, it's giving me the chills just thinking about it. So that would be fear. I'd have a spider on me and I would be having a fear response, which would put my nervous system into fight or flight, would activate my sympathetic nervous system, put me into fight or flight, and I would probably look ridiculous trying to get the spider out of my t-shirt or, wherever it was, flick it off. And it would take a little bit of time for my nervous system to settle back down. Okay, but it would settle back down. Now, if I was afraid of spiders, which I'm not, I'm the kind of person that will catch a spider in the house. And here in Australia, for my overseas listeners, gosh, we can have some enormous spiders. And we have hairy huntsmen, which can be quite big. And I'll put a glass over them, put a piece of paper under the glass and take them off the wall and put them outside. They usually come back in, I'm sure of it. But I'm not afraid of spiders. But if I was, I could be anxious every time I walk down my driveway because I'm anticipating that I'm going to come across a spider that I'm afraid of. So fear is in the moment. It's when you're walking out on the street and a dog rushes at the fence while you're walking along. You would experience a fear response. Next time you're walking that same route, you might feel anxious, anticipating that very same dog is going to rush at the fence and give you a fright. So the fear is in the moment, the anxiety is the anticipation, but they both activate the sympathetic nervous system and they put us into fight or flight, and that means all of the physiological changes that come with it, and that is an increased heart rate, changes in our breathing, short and shallow, fast breathing. We're trying to bring more oxygen into the body because our brain is saying you are in danger, run, fight, protect yourself, keep yourself safe. We sweat, we feel sick, we can have pins and needles, we can have spots in our vision, we get laser focused, we can't think about anything else, and our hearing changes. We're more attuned to kind of more predator sounds when we're in fight or flight, so we can't necessarily hear the things that we would normally hear the same way when we are feeling calm and content and in rest and digest. And so all of those physical responses, they feel overwhelming. And when it comes to our anxiety, when I say about understanding our signs and symptoms, it's about recognizing what are the early signs of anxiety for us. And so it does affect our thinking. It does affect the way we feel in our body. If we can just pause and reflect regularly, and we can check in on ourselves, how does my body feel? How's my posture? Where am I holding tension? Am I clenching my jaw? Am I scrunching my shoulders right up to my ears? How am I feeling in my hands and my legs and my body? And what am I noticing about my physiology? If we are tuned in and can reflect regularly, then we can hopefully catch those signs early. One of my early signals is feeling emotional, feeling like I could cry. I notice my breathing changes. I notice the tension in my jaw. So if I can stop regularly, check in, think about where am I holding tension? How am I feeling in terms of my heart rate and my breathing? How is my thinking? Then I know what I need. And when it came to, I'm going to come back to this because I know I said I was really inspired to share this with you after something I experienced at the gym this morning, but I will get to that, I promise. But really important parts of managing anxiety and thriving with anxiety, which I do and I want for each and every one of us, remembering that does not mean you are anxiety free. We can't get rid of anxiety. We would not want to. Please don't listen to anyone who tells you that you can free yourself in 6 weeks of your anxiety forever. We need it. It's protective. It is the part of my brain that told me to change seats on the train when I had a gut feeling that somebody in my carriage who was sitting a bit close to me was just acting in a way that felt a little unsafe and a little uncomfortable. And so next stop, off that carriage into the next carriage. It's the same feeling and threat detection system that when I was stopped near Woolies the other day, and listeners to the podcast will know that I'm at Woolies way more often than I'd like to be. A man who I did not know, a much older fellow, he said he was 70, stopped me and caught my attention and stopped me outside of the supermarket. And as he reached into his pocket, I immediately stepped back. That is my anxiety protecting me. I'm aware of my surroundings, and the input into my brain is telling my brain this could be threatening. Now, he just pulled out his phone and weirdly wanted to share with me the price in Woolworths of dishwasher tablets that he'd seen very cheaply somewhere else. And so, that amounted to nothing more than a quick chat with perhaps somebody who needed a little bit of conversation, and that was fine. So if anyone tells you that you can get rid of your anxiety in 6 weeks, goodness, please don't believe that. Any attempts to try to get rid of our anxiety are really futile and only create more anxiety. In fact, at the heart of anxiety is the struggle to not be anxious. And that is why understanding our anxiety, having a willingness to notice it, recognize it, accept it, doesn't mean we love it, but just know that it's a part of who we are, that we can dial it down, we can settle it down, we can live a really rich and meaningful life with it. It's really important. Anxiety is there to keep us safe. It's just so overprotective. And our brains detect threat wherever we go. Wherever we go, we can open our phone, see a social media post, and that alarm can be sounded in our brain. And so we are not here to get rid of anxiety. We are here to understand it. We are here to recognize it in ourselves. And we are here to know how to move forward with it, having settled it right down so that we can do all of the wonderful things that we want to do. And so coming back now to this kind of inspiration I had this morning was because I've been training at CrossFit for over 4 years, and whilst my endurance and my fitness are really good, and I'm up and down, I go away for a week and I can't train, or I get sick like everyone else does and I can't train the way I'd like to, I know it's something I'll always come back to, and I always do. So my fitness and my strength and my coordination and a lot of my skills and techniques have come such a long way. And I'm really working hard on, it's called a bar muscle up. So go ahead and Google it if you'd like to. And it's something I know I could do as a kid when I used to do gymnastics. And I can't do it anymore, but I'm really close. But there's one aspect of it where I just don't have the strength. And so my coach, Lucy, this morning, she said, all right, because I was attempting to do it and I was failing each time. I was close, but I was failing. She's like, right, this is the part where you need to really build the strength. This is the part where you need that extra training. And so she said 1,000 of these, and I reckon you'll be across the line. I'm like, okay, that'll take a while, but obviously not all in the one training session. But really what she was doing, which is what we do with everything in the gym, particularly when it comes to learning a technique, is breaking it down into the different parts that come together to form the whole. It got me really thinking about anxiety and how one of the greatest things that we can do to help settle our anxiety down, and by the way, I'm recording a podcast episode with you, and all I feel is a sense of joy to have this opportunity, a sense of privilege to be able to share my voice, and excitement at the difference that this podcast is making, from all the beautiful reviews online, to the messages I get, to the emails I get, to the text messages I get, and the sharing that people are doing of episodes, and the way that the listenership here is growing. I'm not anxious. Not really. Maybe a little bit because I care so much. But the anxiety from episode 1 to episode 150 something, it's more or less gone. And that's because of experience and exposure. And when I was doing that extra exercise in the gym today, and it's all about boosting the strength in my triceps and my shoulders, and I was really thinking about this, it always comes down to breaking it down. And I wanted to let you know that no matter what it is that you are facing that's making you feel anxious, And I really want you to stop for a moment and think about what it is that you've been meaning to do, planning to do, thinking about doing, something that you've avoided, because we know when the brain says it's dangerous, don't do it. When we listen, we don't get that experience of being able to take our anxiety, recognize it, understand it, settle it down with whatever strategy we like. I love a breathing strategy. I love movement. I love using my senses, my beautiful Endota hand cream that, oh goodness, it just engages my senses of touch and smell and sight, and is just such a calming little ritual for me. And we've talked a lot about strategies here. Then we're looking to the next right step is to take a small step towards that kind of goal that you have. Now that might be raising your voice in an area that you feel really passionate about. And that could be starting to write a blog. It could be starting an Instagram page around a topic that you feel really passionate about, or around your skills and your strengths that you want to start sharing with the world, whether or not that's as a business or that's for personal fulfillment. It could be putting your hand up in a meeting at work and sharing an idea. It could be accepting that invitation to a party where you know you're going to meet people that you haven't met before, and you will feel a little bit anxious and you might not be sure what to say, but you're going to give it a go. I want you to think of your example, and I want you to think about how you can break that down into the little steps that will all build together over time to get you to where you want to be. Because exposure is so important. And we're not talking about diving in the deep end. We're not talking about, the old classic, we eat the elephant one bite at a time. Goodness, not a pleasant thought, but, we've all got an elephant. Where can you start? What can you start doing today, tomorrow, this week, this month that will start to move you forward? Take that anxiety with you. Break up that task, that goal, that dream, that plan, that experience into small parts and start where the anxiety feels the least. Do that over and over and over again. Repeat it. And over time, your brain will learn, hey, that's not dangerous. Hey, that's actually safe. Actually, that's quite fun. Actually, I'm actually having a ball. I'm loving doing this. And once you start to get to a point where that anxiety settles down, take the next step. In the same way at the gym. Gosh, the components that contribute to some of the techniques that I'm really thankful to be learning, goodness, they've taken a long time to learn, and the strength has taken a long time to build. And as I build a bit more strength, then I can do a little bit more. It's really no different. We tend to be more willing to do these things in a physical way. We tend to not be as willing to do it with the discomfort that comes from the way we think. But I really hope that this episode inspires you and helps you to think about, right, what do I need to learn about anxiety? Which episodes do you need to go back to? Do you need to go right back to Anxiety 101, an earlier episode? How can you manage your symptoms? What do you recognize about them? And what can you do to really settle them down? How can you think differently about what's really triggering for you? Can you recognize that your brain is detecting a threat and sounding the alarm? Even though something's safe, it just feels uncertain. It's unpredictable. It might feel a little overwhelming. And how can you break it down? How can you break it down and take that first step? I really hope you can. I'd love you to tell me what you choose to do. And as always, I thank you so much for your time. It really is a joy to, be a part of this community with you. And I thank you. Time is precious. I completely understand and really know that the time that you spend with me is a real privilege for me, and I don't ever take it for granted. So thank you again. And I will be back with another guest next week. Okay, look after you. All right? And let me know how you go. Okay, bye. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave a review. To keep the conversation going, I'd love you to join me over on Instagram. You'll find me at Dr Jodi Richardson. Also, if you'd like a copy of my free 5-day mini email course, Calm Your Anxious Brain, then jump over to my website, drjodirichardson.com, and you can sign up down the bottom. I've really enjoyed having your company. Thanks so much. See you next time.